She raised that boy alone, with love and sacrifice. But years later, he kicked her out of her own home, without looking back. The next day, she was alone in a square, aimless and heartbroken. But it was there, on that forgotten bench, that her true story began. A series of unlikely encounters, apple pies, and an emotional reunion would change her life forever. This is a story of pain, courage, reconciliation, and rebirth. Get ready, because what you're about to see will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. This story deserves to be shared. Helena adjusted her apron for the third time in a minute, her hands shaking as she checked to see if the apple pie was golden brown, just the way Ricardo always liked it when he was a child. The sweet aroma that filled her daughter-in-law Camilla's kitchen should have been comforting, but today it only intensified the knot growing in her stomach. "Grandma's here." The high-pitched voice of Sophia, her 5-year-old granddaughter, echoed through the hallway, followed by the sound of bare feet running toward her. Helena smiled genuinely for the first time that morning when she saw the girl approaching with open arms. Sophia had been the light of her days since she moved to Houston 6 months ago at Ricardo's request to help care for the child while Camilla returned to work. "It smells good, Grandma. Is it pie?" Sophia climbed onto a chair to reach the counter, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Yes, sweetheart. Great-grandmother Maria's special recipe." Helena stroked her granddaughter's curly hair. "The one your dad loved when he was your age." The sound of heavy footsteps on the stairs announced Ricardo's arrival. Helena's chest tightened when she saw her son. Now a 32-year-old man, a successful lawyer, impeccably dressed, but with an expression she couldn't quite read. There was something different about him in recent days, a distance that went beyond professional fatigue. "Good morning, Mom." His voice sounded formal, almost formal. "Camilla wants to talk to you in the living room." Helena felt a chill run down her spine. In the 6 months she had lived there had never been a formal conversation in the living room. Discussions about Sophia's routine always took place in the kitchen, between coffees. "Sure, son." "Sophia, will you stay here and watch the cake for Grandma?" The girl nodded enthusiastically, already distracted by her drawings scattered across the table. The living room of Ricardo's house was immaculate. Leather furniture, a Persian rug, a bookcase full of law books, and a few carefully placed family photos. Helena noticed that, among all the photographs, only one included her, an old photo of Ricardo's graduation, where she appeared in the background, proud, wearing the same blue dress she had kept for years for special occasions. Camilla was sitting on the main sofa, her legs crossed, a posture Helena recognized as that of someone about to deliver unpleasant news. Her daughter-in-law had always been polite, but never warm. She had a way of speaking that seemed cordial on the surface, but carried a coldness that Helena felt in her skin. "Helena, please sit down." Camilla gestured to the armchair in front of the sofa. Ricardo remained standing near the window, avoiding his mother's gaze. This detail made Helena's heart race. She had known this behavior since he was a child. Whenever he had something difficult to say, Ricardo avoided eye contact. We need to talk to you about some adjustments to our family dynamics." Camilla's voice was controlled, as if she were presenting a report at work. Helena felt her palms become clammy. "Adjustments? Well, Sophia is growing up and needs more independence. And we, as a couple, feel that we need more privacy." Camilla paused, searching for the right words. "Also, I've noticed that some of your methods of caring for her are a little old-fashioned." The word old-fashioned hit Helena like a punch in the stomach. She swallowed hard, trying to maintain her composure. "Old-fashioned how? For example, those sugary pies you bake all the time. Sophia needs a more balanced diet, with less sugar. And then there's the fact that you let her stay up late when she's with you." Helena felt anger begin to boil inside her chest, but she forced herself to keep her voice calm. "Camilla, I took care of Ricardo all by myself. I worked 3 jobs to make sure he had what he needed. There was never a meal missing from his table. Never." "Mom." Ricardo's voice cut through the air like a cold knife. He finally turned to face her, but his eyes seemed distant, as if she were a stranger. "What Camilla is trying to say is that maybe it's time for you to rebuild your own life." Helena felt the world spin. "My own life? Ricardo, my life is you guys. It's Sophia. It's this family. No, Mom. Your life can't be just that. He crossed his arms, assuming a defensive posture. You're only 58 years old. You can work. You can meet people. You can leave the house. Helena finished the sentence, her voice coming out rougher than she intended. The silence that followed was deafening. Helena could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the distant sound of Sophia playing in the kitchen, the sound of cars passing by on the street. Everything seemed amplified, as if her senses were hyper-alert to pick up anything other than the cruel reality unfolding before her. Helena, you understand that this isn't personal, right? Camilla leaned forward, as if explaining something obvious to a child. It's just a matter of family organization. Maybe you can find a small apartment nearby so you can visit Sophia regularly. Helena looked at Ricardo, searching his eyes for some trace of the boy she had rocked in her arms, whom she had taught to ride a bike, for whom she had spent sleepless nights when he was sick. But all she found was a man who seemed to have decided that she was a problem to be solved. Son, her voice came out as a whisper. Do you really want me to leave? Ricardo looked away again, but his answer came firmly. I think it's best for everyone, Mom. Helena felt something break inside her chest. She stood up slowly, her legs wobbly, and walked to the living room door. Before leaving, she turned around one last time. All right, I'll go pack my things. Helena climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. The room she occupied in her son's house was small but cozy, or at least it used to be. Now, looking around, everything seemed strange, as if she were an intruder who had finally been discovered. She sat down on the bed and let the tears fall freely for the first time since the conversation had begun. They weren't just tears of sadness, but of a deep pain that came from the feeling of having failed completely. As a mother, as a grandmother, as a person. Her hands trembled as she opened the dresser drawer. There were her few clothes, carefully folded, the yellowed photo of her parents, the worn Bible that had belonged to her mother, and at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, the handwritten recipe book she had inherited from 3 generations of women in her family. Helena picked up the notebook reverently. The yellowed pages contained not only recipes, but memories. The neat handwriting of her great-grandmother Maria, an Italian immigrant who had arrived in Texas at the beginning of the last century. The notes of her grandmother Rosa, who had adapted the recipes to the ingredients available during the Great Depression. The additions of her mother, Carmen, who had turned those recipes into a source of income when she was widowed at an early age. The Benedetti family apple pie, Helena murmured, running her fingers over the recipe she had made that morning. That recipe had fed generations, had been the center of family gatherings, a symbol of love and care, and now it was considered old-fashioned. A soft noise at the door made Helena quickly dry her tears. Sophia appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide and worried. Grandma, why are you crying? Helena forced a smile and held out her arms to her granddaughter. Come here, sweetheart. Sophia ran over and nestled in her grandmother's lap, her little hands gently touching Helena's wet face. Are you sad because of the pie? It turned out perfectly, Grandma. Nice and golden brown, just the way you like it. Helena's heart tightened even more. How could she explain to a 5-year-old that the adult world was sometimes cruel and unfair? How could she tell her that she was being sent away precisely because she did things that had always been expressions of her love? Sophia, Grandma is going to have to go away for a while. The girl's eyes widened. Away? Where? I don't know yet, sweetheart. But it will be close by, okay? And you can visit me whenever you want. But I don't want you to go. Sophia clung tightly to her grandmother's neck. Who will bake pies with me? Who will tell me stories about great-grandma Maria? Helena felt her throat tighten. You'll grow up, my love, and you'll learn to bake pies all by yourself. And the stories will stay here. She gently touched her granddaughter's chest. In your heart. They spent the afternoon together, Helena telling old family stories while Sophia helped her fold her clothes. The girl insisted on helping to wrap the recipe book, treating it with the same care she saw her grandmother show it. Grandma, this book is magic, isn't it? Sophia asked, stroking the worn cover. Why magic, sweetheart? Because whenever you read it and make food, everyone is happy. It's like there's a happiness potion in the recipes. Helena smiled through her tears. Maybe there is, Sophia. Maybe there is. When Ricardo came home from work that night, Helena had already finished packing her things. A small suitcase and a paper bag containing her most precious belongings. That was all she had to show for almost 60 years of life. He appeared at the bedroom door, still wearing his suit, his tie loosened. For the first time that day, Helena saw something resembling conflict in his eyes. Mom, do you have somewhere to go? The question sounded more like a formality than genuine concern, but Helena chose to believe that there was still a spark of care there. I'll figure something out, son. I always have. Ricardo nodded, but didn't move from the door. Helena waited for him to say something else, perhaps a word of affection, a thank you for the years of sacrifice, a recognition of what she meant to him. But he just muttered, "Good night," and disappeared down the hall. Helena lay down on the bed for the last time in that room, staring at the ceiling, trying to find strength for the next day. She had no idea where to go or what to do. Her savings were minimal, the few dollars she had managed to save from the odd jobs she had done since moving to Houston. But there was something inside her, a voice whispering that maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to discover who she really was when she wasn't just Ricardo's mother or Sophia's grandmother. It was terrifying, and strangely, also liberating. The next morning, Helena woke up before dawn. She went down to the kitchen one last time and left the apple pie on the counter with a note. For Sophia, with all my love. Grandma Helena. Helena left Ricardo's house as the sun was rising, carrying her small suitcase and paper bag. The morning air in Houston was humid and heavy, but she took a deep breath, trying to find courage in the oxygen that filled her lungs. She had no specific destination in mind. Her legs simply carried her through the streets of the middle-class neighborhood where Ricardo lived, past well-kept houses with green gardens and shiny cars in the driveways. Everything there exuded stability and success, exactly the kind of life she had dreamed of for her son when she worked double shifts to pay for his education. After 2 hours of aimless walking, she arrived at a small square in the center of a more modest neighborhood. There was a simple red brick church on one side, a few trees offering shade, and wooden benches that were showing signs of age. Helena sat down on one of them, not because she had chosen that spot, but because her legs simply couldn't take it anymore. She placed her suitcase beside her and her bag on her lap, hugging it as if it were a baby. The recipe book was inside, along with the few possessions that remained from a lifetime dedicated to caring for others. $40 in her pocket, no plan, nowhere to go. How pathetic you've become, Helena, she muttered to herself, feeling tears threaten to return. That's when she heard a low cry, almost a moan. She turned and saw, 3 seats away, a young woman sitting on the floor, leaning against the seat, holding a small child in her lap. The girl couldn't have been more than 20. Her dark hair tied back in a messy ponytail, her clothes simple but clean. At her feet was a piece of cardboard with a message written in Spanish and English. Need help. Anything. Helena watched the scene for a few minutes. The young woman wasn't actively asking for money. She just held the child and cried silently, like someone who had reached her emotional limit. There was something in her posture that Helena recognized immediately. The desperation of a mother who doesn't know how to protect her child. Without thinking twice, Helena got up and walked over to the young woman. "Hablas español?" she asked, using the little Spanish she had learned during her years working as a cleaning lady. The woman looked up, surprised. "Sí, un poco inglés también. I'm Helena. What's your name?" "Esperanza." Her voice was weak, but there was politeness in her tone. "And this is Miguel." She pointed to the baby, who couldn't have been more than 8 months old. Helena sat down on the ground next to Esperanza, ignoring the fact that her pants were going to get dirty. "Are you hungry?" Esperanza nodded, embarrassed. "It's been 2 days. We only got water from the fountain over there." Helena opened her purse and took out the $40, all the money she had in the world. For a moment she hesitated. It was all she had to survive, to find a place to sleep, to eat. But looking at Esperanza and baby Miguel, Helena saw her own vulnerability reflected back at her, and something greater than fear spoke louder. "Come on, let's buy you some food." "No, señora, I can't accept that." Esperanza tried to refuse, but Helena was already helping her to her feet. "Of course you can. We're two women trying to take care of our families. We have to help each other." They walked to a small snack bar on the corner of the square. Helena bought sandwiches, milk for the baby, fruit, and even a small colorful toy that caught Miguel's eye on the shelf near the cash register. When she left the store, she had only $12 left in her wallet. Back at the square, the two women sat side by side on the bench, sharing their food. Esperanza told her story between tears and bites of her sandwich. She had fled violence in Guatemala with her son, traveling for months until she reached Texas, where she hoped to find a cousin who would help her. But the address she had was out of date, and she had been lost for a week, sleeping in shelters when she could find a place, or in the square when she couldn't. "And you, Señora Helena? Why are you here?" Helena looked at her own suitcase next to the bench. How could she explain that she had been rejected by her own son? How could she admit that at 58, she was as lost as a young immigrant? "I'm also starting over," she said simply. Esperanza nodded, as if she understood that some pains were too difficult to explain in words. When the sun began to set, the two women were still talking. Helena discovered that Esperanza had worked as a cook in a restaurant in Guatemala, that she knew how to make tortillas like no one else, and that she dreamed of one day having her own food business. Esperanza discovered that Helena carried a treasure trove of family recipes, and that her pies made anyone smile. "Señora Helena," Esperanza said as night began to fall, "you saved me today. Not just with the food, but—" She searched for the right words. "With La Esperanza, the hope." Helena smiled, realizing the irony of the young woman's name. "I think you saved me too, Esperanza. I think we saved each other." When the lights in the church came on, and she saw people entering what appeared to be a community meeting, Helena made an impulsive decision. "Come on, let's see if they can help us." The St. Francis Community Church was simple on the outside, but inside it exuded warmth. The walls were decorated with children's drawings. There were chairs arranged in a circle, and the smell of fresh coffee was in the air. Helena and Esperanza entered timidly, carrying their respective bags and baby Miguel. A gray-haired lady with a welcoming smile approached them immediately. "Welcome. I'm Dorothy. I coordinate the social programs here at the church. Did you come for the support group meeting?" Helena exchanged a glance with Esperanza. They didn't know exactly what it was about, but anything was better than spending the night in the square. "Actually, we're in need of help," Helena admitted, feeling her face flush with embarrassment. Dorothy led them to a more secluded corner of the church, where there were comfortable armchairs and a small table with water and cookies. "Tell me what's going on." Helena was surprised at how easy it was to talk to Dorothy. There was something about the woman that inspired confidence. Perhaps it was the way she listened without judgment, or how her eyes filled with genuine compassion as Helena recounted the events of the past few days. "I understand perfectly," Dorothy said when Helena finished. "And you, dear?" she asked Esperanza, who told her story in a mixture of English and Spanish, with Dorothy translating when necessary. "Well, you've come at just the right time. We have a few simple rooms in the back of the church for emergencies. It's not much, but there are beds, bathrooms, and a small kitchen. You can stay as long as you need to get yourselves organized." Helena felt the tears welling up again, but this time they were tears of relief. "How can we repay you? I don't have much money, but I can work. Clean. Cook." Dorothy's eyes lit up. "Funny you should mention cooking. We're organizing a food fair to raise funds for church programs. What kind of food do you know how to make?" "Pies," Helena replied immediately. "Apple pies that have been in my family for 4 generations. And I make tortillas and tamales," Esperanza added, cheering up for the first time that day. Dorothy clapped her hands. "Perfect. How about we do a test run? If you can impress the folks here at the church, we can include you in next weekend's fair." Over the next few days, Helena and Esperanza settled into the simple but clean rooms at the church. They shared not only the space, but also the responsibilities of caring for Miguel and preparing the test recipes Dorothy had requested. Helena found that working alongside Esperanza was unlike anything she had ever experienced. There was no judgment, no criticism of old-fashioned methods. Esperanza watched Helena prepare the pie dough with the same reverence that Helena watched Esperanza knead the tortillas with precise, fluid movements that looked like a dance. "Señora Helena, how did you learn to make these pies so perfect?" Helena smiled, rolling out the dough with movements she had repeated thousands of times throughout her life. My great-grandmother Maria taught me when I was little. She said the secret wasn't just in the ingredients, but in the love you put into it while you're making it. Like a mother's love. Esperanza nodded, understanding. Exactly. And you? How did you learn to cook like this? My grandmother, too. She said that the hands of a woman who cooks with love can heal broken hearts. The two women exchanged a knowing glance. They both carried culinary traditions that were much more than recipes. They were stories. They were love made tangible. They were ways of caring that transcended words. On the day of the test, the church kitchen was filled with the aroma of Helena's pies and Esperanza's tamales. Dorothy brought at least 20 members of the congregation to taste the two women's creations. Helena felt nervousness wash over her when she saw people tasting her pie. What if they didn't like it? What if her methods were really outdated? What if— "My goodness, Helena!" exclaimed a white-bearded gentleman. "This pie is just like the ones my mother used to make in the 1960s. What wonderful nostalgia." "The seasoning is perfect," commented a young mother. "My daughter, who is very picky, is asking for a second piece." The compliments multiplied, not only for Helena's pies, but also for Esperanza's tamales. People couldn't stop eating and praising them. Dorothy approached the two with a radiant smile. "Girls, you've just won over the whole community's taste buds. Would you like to participate in the official food fair?" Helena looked at Esperanza, who was holding Miguel on her lap, her eyes shining with hope, literally and figuratively. For a moment, Helena remembered Camilla saying that her methods were old-fashioned, Ricardo suggesting that she rebuild her life. Maybe they were right about one thing. Maybe it was time for her to discover what she was capable of. "Yes," Helena replied, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "We want to participate." Esperanza grabbed Helena's hand and squeezed it. "Together, Señora Helena. Together we are stronger." That night, when Helena lay down on her simple bed in the back room of the church, she felt more at peace than she had in months. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just taking care of someone, or being taken care of out of obligation. She was building something new, something of her own, something that honored her history while creating a future. The St. Francis Church Food Fair was a resounding success. Helena and Esperanza sold all the pies and tamales they had prepared in less than 3 hours, and they even left with a list of orders for the following week. Word of mouth worked like magic. People began to ask specifically for Helena's pies and Esperanza's tamales. It was Dorothy who suggested the idea that would change everything. "Girls, have you ever thought about expanding the business? I know a retired lady, Marge, who has a food truck sitting in her garage for 2 years. She's always wanted to sell it, but for a fair price, to someone who would really use it." Helena's heart raced. A food truck? She, who just a few weeks ago had been considered unfit to care for her own granddaughter, was now being asked to start a business. "I don't know, Dorothy. I've never owned a business, and I don't have the money to buy a trailer." "That's exactly why you should meet Marge. She's not just interested in the money. She wants to see the trailer being used to make people happy." The next afternoon, Dorothy took Helena and Esperanza to meet Marge Patterson, a 75-year-old woman who lived in a small but charming house on the west side of Houston. The food truck was in the garage, covered with a blue tarp. Marge was a frail woman, but she had energy to spare. Her blue eyes sparkled with vivacity, and she greeted the two with a warm hug. "Dorothy told me about you two," Marge said, leading them to the garage. "A story of new beginnings and partnership that really moved me." When Marge removed the tarp, Helena couldn't help but sigh in admiration. The trailer was perfect, not too big, but well equipped with a functional kitchen, stainless steel counters, and even a small oven that would be ideal for her pies. "My late husband, Frank, bought this trailer when he retired. He dreamed of selling hamburgers at baseball games. We used it for only 6 months before he passed away." Marge ran her hand affectionately over the counter. "Since then, it's been here, waiting for someone who could bring his dreams to life. It's beautiful, Marge, but I really can't afford it." "Who said anything about paying cash?" Marge interrupted with a mischievous smile. "How about a deal? You guys take the trailer, start the business, and pay me a percentage of the profits until you pay off the total amount. But only after the business is up and running." Helena and Esperanza looked at each other in disbelief. "Why would you do that for us?" Helena asked. "Because you remind me of Frank and me when we were young. Because I believe that sometimes life puts us exactly where we need to be. And because—" Marge paused, her eyes filling with tears. "Because Frank always said that food made with love has the power to heal the world, one person at a time." 2 weeks later, the Sweet Roots pie truck was officially up and running. The name had come from a conversation between Helena and Esperanza about their family roots, the recipes that had been passed down from generation to generation, creating sweet roots in their family's history. The first few days were challenging. Helena had to learn to work in a smaller space, calculate quantities to avoid waste, and deal with customers and money simultaneously. Esperanza faced the language barrier with some customers, but her natural friendliness and the quality of her food spoke louder than any words. The turning point came on the third weekend. They had parked the trailer near a park where a craft fair was taking place. A family tried Helena's apple pie and Esperanza's tamales, and the reaction was immediate. "My goodness," exclaimed the mother of the family. "This tastes like childhood, like Sundays at Grandma's house." From then on, a line formed. People shared the food with friends, took pictures, and posted on social media. The hashtag #DoorSweetRootsTruck began to appear in several posts, always accompanied by affectionate comments about how the food warmed the heart and brought back good memories. Helena was surprised to discover skills she didn't know she had. She was good with customers, able to chat while preparing orders. Her stories about family recipes captivated people, who often bought an extra pie just to hear more about her great-grandmother Maria and her culinary adventures. Esperanza, meanwhile, proved to be an excellent administrator. She organized supplies, calculated costs, kept track of money, and still found time to teach Miguel a few words of Spanish, who now crawled around the trailer when there was no movement. At night, when they closed the trailer and returned to their rooms in the church, the two women did the day's accounting and planned for the next day. They weren't just business partners. They had become true friends, united by the shared experience of rebuilding their lives from scratch. "Señora Helena," Esperanza said one night, "do you regret leaving your son's house?" Helena thought for a moment, looking out her bedroom window at the stars shining in the Houston sky. "No," she replied finally. "It still hurts, of course. But I'm discovering that I can be more than just Ricardo's mother. I can be Helena, the woman who makes amazing pies and has her own business. And I'm discovering that I can be more than a hopeless refugee," Esperanza added. "I can be an entrepreneur. I can give Miguel a better future." The two women smiled, knowing they had found something precious in each other, the strength that comes from true friendship and shared determination. 3 months had passed since Helena had started her new life. The Sweet Roots pie truck had become a small local sensation, with a loyal clientele that included families, young professionals, and even other food vendors who stopped by to buy Helena's famous pies during their breaks. That Saturday morning, Helena woke up with a strange feeling in her chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anxiety. It was more like a premonition, as if something important was about to happen. She and Esperanza had decided to park the trailer at the farmers market in downtown Houston, a bustling place that mixed families doing their weekend shopping with tourists exploring the city. It was one of their most lucrative spots, but also the most challenging due to the high volume of customers. Around noon, Helena was focused on browning a new batch of pies when she heard a familiar voice that made her heart stop for a moment. "Grandma Helena." She turned quickly and saw Sophia running toward her, her curly hair flying in the wind, a radiant smile on her face. Behind her, walking more slowly and with an expression that mixed surprise and discomfort, was Ricardo. Helena dropped the spatula she was holding and knelt down to receive her granddaughter's enthusiastic hug. "Sophia, my love, what are you doing here? Daddy brought me to buy fruit, and I saw your trailer." Sophia spoke quickly, excitedly. "I knew it was you because of the smell of apple pie. It's just like in our kitchen." Ricardo approached slowly, his hands in his pockets, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Helena stood up and faced him, trying to control the emotions that were stirring inside her. "Ricardo." Her voice came out firmer than she expected. "Hi, Mom." He looked around, observing the trailer, the customers lining up, Esperanza efficiently organizing the orders. "So, this is what you're doing?" There was something in his tone that Helena couldn't quite place. Surprise? Approval? Skepticism? "Yes. My partner Esperanza and I have a food business. We sell pies and traditional Mexican food." "Grandma, do you have an ice cream shop?" Sophia asked, confused by the concept. Helena laughed, her first genuinely happy reaction since seeing her son. "Not exactly, sweetheart. It's a food truck. I make pies like the ones we used to make together. Can I try some? Please?" Helena looked at Ricardo for permission. He nodded briefly, and she served a generous piece of warm apple pie to her granddaughter. Sophia's eyes lit up with the first bite. "It's even better than I remembered." "Daddy, try some." Ricardo hesitated, but finally accepted the piece Helena offered him. She watched his face closely as he chewed, looking for any sign of recognition or emotion. It's just like you used to make when I was little," he said finally, his voice lower. "It's the same recipe, Ricardo. Great-grandmother Maria's recipe, remember? The one you said was magic." An uncomfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the sound of Sophia asking for a second piece and the typical noises of the market around them. Where are you living?" Ricardo asked. "At the San Francisco Community Church. Dorothy, the coordinator, gave us rooms in the back while we get our lives in order." "You?" Helena gestured to Esperanza, who was taking care of Miguel while serving other customers. "Esperanza and I met when I needed a friend the most. She and her son Miguel have become my family." Ricardo watched the interaction between Helena and Esperanza, the ease with which they worked together, the way Helena picked Miguel up naturally when Esperanza needed to get something from the freezer. "Daddy," Sophia tugged at her father's shirt, "why doesn't Grandma live with us anymore?" The child's innocent question fell like a bomb on the conversation. Ricardo blushed visibly, and Helena felt her chest tighten with the memory of that painful day 3 months ago. It's complicated, Sophia," Ricardo muttered. "It's not complicated," Helena said, surprising both herself and her son with the firmness in her voice. "Sometimes adults need to find out who they really are, Sophia. And to do that, sometimes they need to leave home and create their own adventures." Sophia processed the answer with the seriousness that only children can muster. "Like a treasure hunt?" "Exactly like a treasure hunt. And do you know what treasure I found?" Helena knelt down again to be at her granddaughter's height. "I discovered that I can do much more than bake pies. I discovered that I can have a business, that I can help other people, that I can be strong even when I'm afraid." Ricardo listened to every word, his expression gradually changing. Helena could see something shifting in his eyes. Perhaps it was recognition, perhaps it was regret. "Mom, he began, but was interrupted by a group of customers approaching the trailer. "Excuse me." Helena stood up, returning to her professional demeanor. "Would you like anything?" The next 20 minutes were a curious dance. Ricardo and Sophia remained near the trailer, watching Helena work. She moved with confidence and skill, chatting with customers, telling stories about the recipes, laughing genuinely. It was a version of his mother that Ricardo hadn't seen in years, a woman in her element, glowing with purpose. When the rush subsided, Ricardo was still there. Sophia had sat down on a stool that Esperanza had improvised out of a box, drawing on a piece of paper Helena had given her, completely at ease in the environment. "Mom," Ricardo said finally, "I need to talk to you." Helena felt her stomach tighten, but she nodded. Esperanza, sensing the tension, offered to stay with Sophia while they talked. They walked to a more secluded area of the market, near a small fountain where the sound of water muffled the surrounding conversations. I didn't know," Ricardo began, the words coming out with difficulty. "I didn't know that you could," he gestured vaguely toward the trailer. "Achieve what, Ricardo?" "Be so independent, so happy." The last word came out like a painful confession. Helena crossed her arms, but not defensively. It was more a gesture of self-preservation, as if she were preparing herself for whatever might come next. "You thought I was going to wither away and disappear. Is that it?" "No, Ricardo ran his hand through his hair. a gesture Helena recognized from when he was a child and nervous. I thought I was doing the right thing. Camilla said you needed independence, that it wasn't healthy for you to live only for us. And I believed it would be better for everyone. And now? Ricardo looked at the floor, then at the fountain, anywhere but his mother's eyes. Now I see that maybe I lost more than you did. Helena felt her heart race, but she forced herself to remain calm. What do you mean? Sophia asks about you every day. She doesn't understand why you left, and I don't know how to explain it anymore. He finally looked at her, and Helena saw tears threatening to fall from his eyes. And Camilla, things aren't good between us. Since you left, it's as if the house has lost something essential. Helena wanted to feel satisfaction at this confession. She wanted to say, I told you so. She wanted to make him feel the pain she had felt. But looking at her son, this man she had raised alone, who had been her reason for living for so long, all she felt was a complex mixture of love and sadness. Ricardo, she said softly, I'm not going to lie and say it didn't hurt. It hurt a lot. But you know what hurt the most? It wasn't being sent away. It was realizing that you really believed I had no value other than being your mother. That's not true. No. Helena raised an eyebrow. You told me to rebuild my life, as if the 58 years I lived before didn't mean anything. As if everything I did, all the sacrifices, all the nights I spent awake worrying about you, weren't real life. Ricardo opened his mouth, but no words came out. Helena continued, her voice growing stronger. But you know what? You were right about one thing. I needed to find out who I was beyond being your mother, and I found out that I am much more than I ever imagined. She gestured toward the trailer. I discovered that I have courage, that I can be an entrepreneur, that I can make real friends, that I can help other people. I discovered that my food isn't old-fashioned. It's special. Mom, I'm so sorry. I know you are. And I forgive you, Ricardo. But things can't go back to the way they were. His face contorted in pain. You don't want to be part of our family anymore? I will always be part of your family. I'm your mother. I'm Sophia's grandmother. That will never change. But now I also have my own life, my own chosen family. She looked at Esperanza and Miguel, who were playing with Sophia near the trailer. And that doesn't diminish my love for you. In fact, it might even increase it. Ricardo followed her gaze. You seem different, lighter. I feel different. For the first time in years, I'm not living just to please other people or to be what they expect me to be. I'm being myself. They remained silent for a few minutes, watching the market bustle, processing the words they had exchanged. Can I visit you sometimes? Ricardo asked, his voice heavy with vulnerability. And bring Sophia? Helena smiled, the first genuine smile she had given her son in months. Of course you can. But now you'll have to make an appointment. I'm a busy businesswoman. Ricardo laughed, a sound that was almost tearful. You always had a sense of humor, even in the worst of times. It's one of the things I inherited from my great-grandmother Maria. She used to say that laughter is the secret spice of life. They returned to the trailer, where Sophia ran to hug both her father and grandmother. Did you guys make up? She asked, with the frankness typical of children. Yes, my love, Helena replied, kissing her granddaughter on the top of her head. We talked. Great. Now can I visit Grandma in her trailer? Sophia looked hopefully at her father. Yes, you can, Ricardo said, looking at Helena with an expression that mixed gratitude and respect. Whenever she allows it. Esperanza approached, holding Miguel. Señora Helena, is everything okay? Everything is great, Esperanza. Ricardo, I'd like to introduce you to my business partner and friend, Esperanza. And this is Miguel. Ricardo greeted Esperanza politely, and Helena noticed how he observed the natural interaction between them, the way they cared for each other and their respective responsibilities. Mom, he said before leaving, could you teach me how to make great-grandmother Maria's pie? For Sophia? Helena felt her eyes fill with tears, but they were tears of joy. Of course, son. The recipe has always been yours, too. After Ricardo and Sophia left, Helena and Esperanza closed the trailer in silence, each lost in her own thoughts. How do you feel, Señora Helena? Esperanza asked as they cleaned up the utensils. Helena thought for a moment, watching the people bustling about the market, smelling the pies still baking, listening to Miguel's laughter as he played with his makeshift toys. You know, Esperanza, for a long time, I thought my worth as a person depended on how much others needed me. I thought that if I wasn't indispensable, I wouldn't be loved. And now I know that I can be loved for who I am, not just for what I do for others. And more importantly, I've learned to love myself too. Helena looked at the hands that had prepared thousands of meals throughout her life, that had cared for wounds, that had embraced and comforted. Now those same hands were building something new, something that was hers alone. Great-grandmother Maria's recipe wasn't just about apple pie, she said, almost to herself. What was it then? It was about how to transform simple ingredients into something extraordinary through love and patience. It was about how traditions can be honored and renewed at the same time. It was about how a woman can be strong and sweet at the same time. Esperanza smiled. Like mothers do. Like women do, Helena corrected gently. Whether we're mothers, friends, or business partners, when we support each other, we can create completely new recipes for life. That night, as Helena recorded the day's sales in her makeshift accounting notebook, she reflected on the journey of the past few months. She had started out as a rejected woman, without direction or purpose. Now she was an entrepreneur, a mentor, a true friend. More importantly, she had learned that loving other people did not mean disappearing as an individual. She had discovered that her recipe for life could include ingredients she didn't even know she had. And perhaps, she thought with a smile, that was the sweetest lesson of all. It's never too late to discover new flavors in your own existence. End of story.